welcome to the Irocknits podcast. I'm back. It's been 2 weeks. I'm going to try to do this kind of quick today. I just brought my mom home from the hospital tonight, and so she and my dad are resting, and I'm going to try to get through just a little bit of a shorter podcast today. I think I'm going to try to do my best to keep it moving pretty quickly. I'm going to start today with a pattern to share. Today's sweater of the day is the Hiro. I worked for about 10 minutes trying to get the light to be better on this, and it's just blowing it out. It's not that bright. Just know that it's pink and orange. It is what it is today. I just have to go with it. And then I have a couple of giveaways. I have a question to answer from someone, and I also have a tip and a trick and a tool and a story. So much for keeping it really quick. I'll do my best. Today I want to start out with a pattern that is something that I shared this weekend. I taught in Stillwater, Minnesota all weekend, a 3-hour sweater workshop on Saturday and a 3-hour sweater workshop on Sunday. And that group was great. She just packed them in there, and they were all super receptive, and we had a really good time trying on sweaters and talking about construction and drape and yarn and fit and all kinds of things. So I had a really nice time, but usually people arrive fairly early to my classes, and then I stand up in the front of the room, and there's this like kind of awkward time where I'm thinking, what should I talk about? What should we chat about? And so this time I grabbed a couple of new patterns. I took my Chim Chim-in-ney Hat sample, and then I took along this hat sample. This is my old-fashioned stocking hat pattern that's available on Ravelry, so it's a perfect time of the year to be thinking about knitting an old-fashioned stocking hat. So I have 3 samples. This is the short worsted. Then I have the super long worsted. Boom, 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 boom. So it's like that, if you can kind of see. And then I have the super long fingering version with a pom-pom that's pink and black. So all of those are photographed as samples in the pattern on Ravelry, and it's just called Old Fashioned Stocking Hat, and that's available out there for anybody who's interested in maybe knitting over the Thanksgiving break here. Maybe you're watching the podcast and you think, oh gosh, that would be fun to knit for a child or a grandchild, niece, nephew, or yourself. If you have some kind of holiday themed yarn, or just do 2 colors, do the brim in red and the other part in green, or you could do the brim in white and the Santa part, make it look like a Santa hat in red. So that's kind of a fun pattern that I took over there. So the Chim Chim-in-ney Hat sample, and then the old-fashioned stocking hats went with me. Say, why don't we just give away that Chim Chim-in-ney Hat pattern, because I just drew for it, and I will show you who it goes to. It goes to number 5, Merlin Magic 21, Connie in Minnesota. And I will just gift that to you in the next couple of days, so you don't have to really get in touch with me. It'll just appear in your inbox on Ravelry. And thanks for signing up to win a pattern. So there's the Chim Chim-in-ney Hat giveaway. I have 2 other giveaways, so let's get them out of the way, right? So you don't have to sit through the whole thing if you don't want to. Some days you just don't have time. You're just like, tell me who won. Okay, so I had 2 skeins of Mad Tosh in the gray colorway, if you'll remember. It's very pretty. Single ply, really nice. So this is the winner for that. Number 60, 2 monkeys, 1 bear. Brittany from Maine. However, this weekend I was looking for some other yarn, and I found 2 more skeins of gray Mad Tosh. It has a little bit more darkness to it. It has some other colors, and I thought, that's even darker than the first one. I like the first one better than the second one, and I'm still not going to knit with it. So I drew another winner. I just went to the same thread. So number 62, Laura in Wisconsin, and that's Laura from Wisconsin, gets the other 2 skeins of Mad Tosh. I just laid them on the desk, and I thought, just draw. Nobody's going to care if they're getting free Mad Tosh gray skeins and they wanted the lighter gray. maybe Laura will be just as happy with the darker gray. So get in touch with me, Laura and Brittany, and give me your mailing addresses and your first and last name on Ravelry. Just private message me, and I will get those out in the mail to you probably this week. If you get back to me, everybody's kind of sitting around watching podcasts during Thanksgiving. Maybe you're not, but well, I was teaching the sweater workshop. One of the sweaters that I talk a lot about is the Hiro sweater. And so I decided that maybe that should be the sweater of the week this week. It is not my design, finally. We're going to be talking about someone else's design going forward here quite a bit. This is by Julia Farwell-Clay, and I have knit 15 or 16 of this sweater, and only 2 of them were in child's sizes. I gave them to everyone for Christmas 3 years ago. Here's a photo of 12 of them, 10 of them, something like that, hanging on the line or on the fence at the dog park. This was the last time that these sweaters were ever going to be together because they were going to be gifted, and I made 2 for sister-in-laws on one side of the family, 2 for sister-in-laws on the other side of the family, one for my mom, my niece, and my 2 dog park friends. And so right before Christmas that year, I asked Renee and Karen to meet me at the dog park and stay after we walked to help me take pictures and to actually take care of my dog so that he wasn't too wild. But we hung them on the fence, and it had just snowed that morning. I mean, it couldn't have been much better. And then I turned to them and said, you each have one of these sweaters. Can you guess which one is yours? I didn't really try to do people's colors very much. I just kind of had a general idea of what people might like. And this one back here on the left, that's my mom's, and she's here now, so I just happened to have hers here. So I knit hers out of Cascade 220, and that's purple, pink, green, and yellow. And then this one is my wild and crazy only neon sweater I own, out of the Fat Squirrel Fibers. Does anybody remember back when Amy Beth was dyeing yarn and she told a story on a podcast, and she named the podcast That Bead in Her Ear? If you have not listened to that story, I laughed until tears ran down my face. She has a couple of stories on her podcast. That one and the one about the homeschooling mom that's in like episode 4 or 5. I think that's when I deeply fell in love with Amy Beth. This yarn was That Bead in Her Ear. And after that story, I thought, well, I just have to buy that. And when it came, it was so bright. And I thought, can you really make a sweater out of this? So I decided, well, I'll give it a try. So I did this kind of lime green. This one's blowing out too. It isn't quite as fluorescent as it's looking on the screen. Maybe on your screens it won't look quite that bright. And then I added square buttons down the front of this sweater. I'm going to show you the technique that I use to sew these buttons on is not necessarily one that most grown adult women would use, but it's a really cute idea if you're doing a kid's sweater. You've literally used the yarn on the outside of the button to make designs. And you can find these on Pinterest. I printed this particular one out off of Pinterest, and it's the one I hand out in my sweater class when I talk about this sweater, is that I put the pink in the yellow section and the orange in the green section and the green in the orange section to, you know, take it up a notch. Because why wouldn't you if you were knitting a sweater that is absolutely this bright and crazy? I do like coming out of hibernation in the spring. In what, you all don't hibernate in the winter? It's when I can put on a few pounds and kind of curl up in front of my fireplace with my fleece blanket. But I do like coming out of hibernation in the spring and wearing this sweater out and providing a pop of color for anyone that I run into. So I just taught this class to a bunch of newer colorwork knitters who wanted to learn how to steek a sweater. The pattern is written for a pullover and a cardigan, but the pattern is written flat for the cardigan, which means you're knitting back and forth. You're going around, but it's not connected in the middle. So that means that you have to do the color work on the back side of the yoke. And I did that in this one, and I did that in my niece's because hers was a child sweater, and it didn't bother me at all. But I've been knitting color work for years. So this group of women wanted to knit the color work in the round and then steek their sweaters open. So 2 of them knit children's sweaters and 1 knit an adult sweater. And then I had another gal in the class who had never done color work before, and she knitted an adult sweater and didn't steek it. She just picked her colors. So I decided to knit along with the group. So I used Malabrigo, teal feather, and honestly, this Hiro is just stunning in real life. It's jewel tones, and they're deep, and they're rich, and I will post a picture on Instagram and try to get the color better for people. Or also on my pattern page now, I'll put it on the mannequin when I'm done here today, and I will try to get a better color representation of this so you can see it. These are all Malabrigo colors, and you know how they have that deep saturated color. I don't always do the folded hem at the bottom of these sweaters because it's quite a bit of extra knitting, but on mine I did, and on this orange one I did. On my mom's it just has a ribbed bottom, and I didn't always, when I was knitting so many of them, do the color work on the sleeves. Some of them have plain sleeves because, for heaven's sakes, you know, there has to be a limit. So after the picture was taken, I knit one for Megan, one for Jeanette of Sun Valley Fibers, one for myself. Mine wasn't in the picture because I hadn't knit it yet. One for Baby Gift. And I think one more person got one. I can't think of who it was. But anyway, you do not have to do the turned hem. If you do, some of you really enjoy laughing with me and when I crack myself up, so I'm going to just leave that right in there. But if you do the turned hem at the bottom of the sweater, it calls for a provisional cast on. And the provisional cast on works right into twisted rib, because then the twisted rib will suck that turned under hem. I wonder if I can show this a little bit better here. See, it's just turned under. That provisional cast on goes right into this twisted rib, and then you knit until you're even, and then you join it all together. You cannot rip a provisional cast on out from twisted ribbing because the twist locks it into place. Good thing to know before you teach a class, Cori. Not so much. Didn't remember that. I didn't remember having any trouble on this one, so don't know if I was just smart in that moment and knit a plain row first. That's what you need to do. So you cast on provisionally, knit a plain row, and then go into the twisted ribbing in order for it to pull out more easily. Two people in my class had to cut their provisional cast on off, and then they still couldn't pick up all the stitches because the ones that were twisted just got too tight and fell off. It was really a shame. I felt terrible for about 3 weeks in October and into early November because I even contacted Julia and said, I've knit so many of this. How did I get this wrong? And she said, oh yeah, you definitely have to do a plain round first. And it is not in the pattern. So I will put it on all my project pages that I did turned hems on now. Maybe I'll even go out and put it on every one that I've knit so that people might see that note and give it the little lifesaver ring so that other people can not have that crisis in that moment. Okay. I love teaching this sweater because it's a great beginner colorwork sweater. There are no floats to carry. Nothing ever travels more than just a couple of stitches. And so you can very easily do this. Even if you've never done color work before, I mean, I usually tell people to start with a hat and just try a little color work on a hat to get started in the round. But if you're a brave soul and kind of like the challenge of diving in, you could definitely just get started on this by dropping your yarn with your right hand and picking it back up, and dropping your yarn with your right hand and picking it back up. You would not have to knit with 2 colors in 2 hands. I mean, Arnie and Carlos drop their yarn every time, so can't be too much wrong with it, right? The thing is that no matter what colors you choose, you are pixelating them into the next color going up. Have orange going into green, which might be kind of a harsh stripe if you were just doing it solidly, but because you do a few rows of 1 orange, 1 green, 1 orange, 1 green, and then orange, and then that pixelates into the pink, almost all color combinations seem to work. I had a couple that I thought were a little off when I was picking colors, but I really wanted to use scrap yarn when I was knitting so many of them. I had this huge quantity of Cascade 220 in my stash. I had some vintage in my stash, you know, worsted weight skeins that I just wanted to use up. And so I thought, I'm just going to make this work without buying any new yarn, and finding out that almost any color can pixelate into another color. It's like that whole fade concept. I've talked about this before. The Hiro is the original fade. If you do a gradient, you're going to from blue to blue to blue to blue, lighter to darker, or darker to lighter, then you know you've kind of got a fade on your hands. So I highly recommend it for anyone who's looking for a really well-fitting sweater that is fairly easy to do. You know, bottom up, knit the sleeves, join in the round, and then yoke decreases throughout. We talk a lot about that in my sweater class, is the difference between decreasing on the tops of sweaters or increasing, depending on if you're doing a yoke or a raglan or a set-in sleeve, how the fit can change on that. But this one is just done really well. There's not too much fabric under the arm at all, and so it's not saggy there. She just has a really nice mathematical conversion. I don't know, that's kind of makes it sound to get this done. I have a story to tell about this particular sweater and this picture. So if you look way over on the far side, I don't know what side that's going to be for you, but over here, my left, your right, I would assume, unless it's flipping it, you see that one of these sweaters is not a Hiro. It's a North Shore pullover by Tin Can Knits. This particular sweater has a river or stream and some waves and some mountains and some trees, and it's stunning. But I didn't want to knit 15 Hiros and 1 North Shore sweater when I originally started. But we had a new niece in the family. My nephew went to Arizona and married a gal from down there, and then ended up coming back to South Dakota. And she had never been in the North. And so I wanted to be respectful of having a new person in our family by asking her whether or not she would wear a sweater like this, because I didn't really think it was necessarily going to be her style. And she said, probably not. And I told her it was a surprise and I was doing it for everyone else in the family. And I said, would you like a sweater at all that I knit? And she said, yeah, she would. So we picked her color. Okay, had to get Dad a cough drop. He's reading now in the porch, and he's just coughing and coughing and coughing. So if you could hear it, that's what it was, and he's fine, but I got him a cough drop. Going back to my story. So we picked a really pretty teal blue for her body of her sweater, and I thought about just doing a solid one. But then I said, let's go look at Ravelry, and I brought up some other yoked sweaters, and immediately she liked the North Shore. And it's a beautiful, I would like it for myself actually. It's a really pretty sweater, and Tin Can Knits writes, you know, exquisite patterns. So I knit the North Shore for her, knit all the other sweaters for everyone else in the family, was, you know, furiously knitting that fall. I started these in August, and I just knit everywhere I went, and I was constantly knitting on tubes in the round, body tubes and sleeve tubes, and trying to get these banged out and off the needles. But it came to Christmas Eve, and I was so excited I'm a huge gifter. I love giving people gifts. It must be my love language because it is just my favorite thing to do. If I see something that I think you would like, I don't even have to know you that well. And I will buy it for you and present you with it and make myself feel just great. So everyone's unwrapping their presents, and my niece, I won't use her name, unwrapped her present and turned to my sister-in-law, her new mother-in-law, and said, "Oh, I really like yours better." And Jenny said, "Well, I like yours better." So they swapped. So I could have knit another Hiro and just left it at that. It would have been fine. So this one was Jenny's. This one, which is one of the ones that I didn't think was going to be great because I didn't know if that brown, gold, and silver was really going to show up very well in a, I don't know, it just, with the blue, it wasn't one of my favorite color combinations. Let's just put it that way. And I ended up liking that one almost the best. So anyway, I could go on and on about the Hiro. I love the sweater. It comes in a child's petite. You can buy that separately, and it is written for boys and girls, cardigan and pullover, I believe, yes. And then the adult version has a number of sizes. Just a really great fitting sweater and fun. Also, the Hiro sweater has waist shaping built in to its shape. And I have not done the waist shaping on any of the 15 sweaters I knit. I've harped on it long enough. You guys know by now that I'm not a fan of putting in a heavy indent into my sweaters. And it's hard to match up exactly where that should go. And so I just leave it out. I figure, you know, my old saying, the sweater will go in where I go in, and it will go out where I go out. So, there we go. The sweater of the day is the Hiro. Well, let's talk about a couple of tips and tricks that I have for you today. Does anybody else know about Chatbooks from Instagram? Or actually, Instagram doesn't really make them, but they're called Chatbooks. I'll show you the 4 that I just grabbed off my bookshelf. So you sign up online. I'll give you the and every time you take 60 pictures and post them to Instagram, they make a book for you. So once I had, they're numbered. So I'm on volume 37. I started with this company a number of years ago, and I don't have to scrapbook my pictures anymore because the quote that I put on Instagram, the little, is right there. So they put that, and then they put your picture next to it. So whatever you've taken a picture of goes into the book. And before they mail it, they send you a heads up and they say, your chapbook is about to be printed. Is there anything you would like to remove from it? So if you have like a weird post in there, or like sometimes people repost things on their Instagram and it doesn't really, isn't a personalized Instagram picture, you can take that out. You can change your cover photo, so you can choose whichever one cover photo is in the book. You can choose for that. Here's the Knitting at the Library cowl that matches knitting books in worsted weight. It's just a really fun little book to go through. When I started, they were $5.95 or $6.95. They're bound. They're tough, durable. And now I think they're $8.95, $7 or $8.95. And they come out, I get them quite regularly. And they just look great on my shelf. I have 37 of them. And so it's just been, I used to be a huge scrapbooker. We've talked about that. And I just don't do it anymore. I don't have the time, and I really don't have the inclination. It's just not something that I'm thinking that I want to do right now. So this is just a nice alternative. When my mother-in-law, my Ross's mom, comes to town, she will often sit down with these and say, because she's not on Instagram, would never have any reason that she would see those pictures. But you can put any pictures you want into a book. So when Megan and I were writing the book, I made a book out of all the designs that we had put in the book, and I have one of all just my sweaters in the book. So, hey bud, did you come say hi to Mom? So anyway, Chatbooks, tip number 1. Tip number 2 for today is a stitch counter chain. There's one. Here's another one. And then here's another one. These are used to counter rows as you mark things going up. Here's an extremely long one that has numbers all the way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you can move this little lobster claw up the ring, or you can just move it up onto your needle every time you do a row. So you can mark off rows. It's wonderful. And then when you go back and you're on row 20, then this can become your counter, and you can go through at 20, and then you can go through the 30s and the 40s by just moving the little lobster claw down. So I got this from Twice Sheared Sheep on Etsy. It's got a pretty little bead on the end of it. And they weren't terribly expensive. I really like using these. I don't mind having something dangling on my knitting. I have kind of dangling stitch markers that I like to use, and they never really bother me too much. But if I have to count up rows, I would rather do that sometimes than use a Post-it note. I'm just not always great at keeping track of the Post-it notes after the fact. And then I can't figure out where I'm at, and so having this right on my needle really works. So it's called Stitch Counter Chain on Etsy, and there are tons of them. My favorite one was one in a circle, and the loops went around the outside of the circle, and it broke. And so I had someone try to fix it, and it didn't work out very well. They didn't have the right kind of plastic or wire, and so I would really like to get that one fixed, because that was my favorite one in the circle, but it's all just a mass of beads and wires right now, so I can't really show it to you. But I have one to give away on the podcast. So if you would like your own stitch counter chain, I've had them in use on several projects at a time sometimes, so even if you went out and bought one, it wouldn't hurt to have a second one. Or you could gift this to a knitter friend for Christmas. It would be a great Christmas gift. Go out and just throw your name on the thread in Ravelry. I'll put up a post about the giveaway. I'm going to give away 2 Hiro sweater patterns this time. So I will gift the Hiro sweater to whoever goes out into the threads and is interested in that. And then I will draw a winner for this next time, so in 2 weeks. So get out to that thread and put your name on it for that. The last giveaway. Okay, I have a note from last episode, I think, maybe it was 2 episodes ago, about when I talked about shepherd's wool, and that is a perfect time to also bring it up again because of the Hiro sweater. So the shepherd's wool that I used in the Cahoots sweaters, the owls, the gradient owls, when I said it's hard to find a worsted weight yarn company dyer that does 6 colors, if you're going to do 6 owls, which in a gradient, not a lot of people do. Shepherd's wool is a great one to try. And someone got in touch just to let me know that the Loopy U carries shepherd's wool, and I knew that, but I didn't even think to say it on the podcast. And you can get it from Stonehedge Fiber Mill out of Michigan. You can just go on their website, and they also have it. But there are many places that carry it, and it would be a good option for this sweater. So I had written this note about say something about the Loopy U, because I do use the Loopy U. I think they have great customer service and really fast shipping. And they have a lot of yarns that you might not be able to find in your local area. on their website, so it's a good one to try. Loopy, U-E-W-E. And shepherd's wool would be a good option for the Hiro sweater, so I wanted to bring that up. I had a question last time about short rows, and I said I would talk about it this time, and I didn't prepare it. I watched a couple videos. I have some notes. We just got home from the hospital. I need to make supper. I'm just going to have to do it next time. I'm just going to have to skip over it quickly. And I have another question this time from someone that I'll just answer them both next time. I don't want to take too much time of your time during the Thanksgiving holiday, or I really just don't have time. We've been at the hospital since Thursday, and I taught all weekend, and and it was Minnesota Vikings football last night, and we lost. So it's a day of mourning. We're all wearing black. Congratulations to the Chicago Bears. Amber, your team beat my team. I'll be a good loser. Such a bummer. I just love the teams. I love watching football. I coached high school cheerleaders for many, many years, and it was all because I really liked football. Okay, 2 more things. I have 2 patterns coming out in the next little while here. One with Leading Men Fiber Arts. There will be a knit along for that. I think I can share the news that it will be a 12 days of Christmas or 12 days of holiday knitting. We will start knit along the day after Christmas on the 26th, and you can gift yourself 2 gradient sets of yarn from Leading Men Fiber Arts, or use your own sock yarn or gradient sets that you might have at home, and then knit with me for 12 days, mystery knit along. I think that the Advent knit-alongs are absolutely wonderful, and I would love some year to feel like I had the time to knit for 24 days before Christmas. But I don't, and most of my friends don't. I know many people who have started those with all of the good intentions on December 1st, and then, you know, it just peters out because you get so busy. So we were thinking that maybe because you're sitting around for a day or 2 after the holiday, maybe, or you just maybe have some downtime, that you could knit along and get a clue every day for 12 days. However, I'm not a huge mystery knit along fan. It's a personality trait, quirk thing, maybe. I just need to know what I'm knitting. So for those of you who don't want to do the mystery knit along but would like to knit along with us, we're going to have a spoiler thread. I'm going to put it up in my group. I'm going to put a picture of what the finished item is, what it looks like, what colorways you could use, what yarn might be appropriate, so you can have it all spoiled and then just get your clue every day. Or you can just mystery knit along, and you can not know what it is and be completely surprised and not go to the spoiler thread. I just think it really eliminates about half the people for a mystery knit along, because you say, well, I'll see what it is and then I'll decide if I want to knit it yet later, but then you don't get to participate in the camaraderie of doing the knit along and being in a group and chatting about it and talking about it. So on the next episode, I will talk more in depth about your color choices and yarn choices and things like that. But I want people to know that that is an option for a purchase in December. And then last time I mentioned that I would be going to the Carolina Fiber Fest as a speaker, and that I had been chosen as the shawl designer for that event, and I don't get to go. They asked me to be a teacher, but they do not have the funding to get me there or to put me up or to pay for my sweaters to get there or my shawls or any of that. And so they would pay me to teach, but I would have to take all that expense on myself. And so I just had to decline and say that, you know, maybe if the event gets a little bigger, they will have some funds that they could pay the teachers to get there, but I just am not going to be able to come. But my shawl will still be the shawl for the knit along that they will be running in January and February and into March for anyone that is going to the event, and I will be showing that on the next podcast. It is knit with Suburban Stitcher DK 2 250 yard skeins. So it's a DK weight shawl. It is not a mystery. It is kind of a sampler. And Diane of Suburban Stitcher is going to have an update on December 15th in her shop so she's going to put a lot of DK skeins in her shop on December 15th, and you can go out there if you want to purchase some of Diane's yarn to do the January, February, or March knit along for that shawl. So mark those 2 dates on your calendar. December sometime for Leading Men Fiber Arts gradients in fingering weight, and Diane of Suburban Stitchers DK for the shawl, if you're interested in either one of those things. I will give more information next time on both of those, but I just kind of wanted to mention it because occasionally you skip a podcast now and then, right? And so if I don't mention it on a couple, you might not hear about it, and then afterwards you might be like, oh, I missed it and I wish I would have known. So I wanted to mention it today and then mention it again in 2 weeks. With that, I think I'm going to be done for today. You can find show notes for my podcast on my Ravelry page and at Irocknits.com. So I put them in both places. All the things I talk about, links to every shop or store or pattern. I link everything. It is also in the down bar. If you're watching this on YouTube, and you can click into the down bar right under my face here, all the links are also there, and they're there for all the episodes. So if you wanted to go back and look at something now, those are all out there. I put the show notes up on my Ravelry page, but I don't put them up on Facebook at this time. And if that's something that's the only media you use, then let me know, and I can put them there too, because I just can copy them and paste them. But I have been pretty diligent at keeping show notes up for everyone. So I guess that's all I have for today. Go sign up for the giveaways. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, all of you. I eat gluten-free, and I'm gonna go order some gluten-free pies tomorrow morning and pick them up at the bakery. Maybe just one gluten-free pie. It doesn't need to be plural if you're the only gluten-free eater at the table, right? Right? Just give you the excuse to eat more. But we're going to have a very low-key Thanksgiving this year. I think Mom and Dad will still be with us, and they're going to just need to kind of rest and recuperate. Mom is doing pretty well. She had a really tough couple of days. It was a tough one. The surgery lasted 8.5 hours, and she's 79, so she had a hard time coming out of anesthesia, and really was feeling rough. But this afternoon, really feeling much better, and so we decided that she would feel more comfortable if she could get out of the hospital and maybe get some sleep at our house instead of getting woken up all the time. So we're going to give it a go. I will talk to you all in 2 weeks, and until then, keep it colorful. Bye.